Hey, well, good morning and welcome to another daily devotional. We are continuing our way through the book of Job. Today we are in Job chapter 10. So, in the midst of Job's pain and suffering, all of these things that are happening, we begin to see a little bit of a digression with Job. In the last chapter, we kind of heard him rebuke his friend. His friend kind of told him all these things that was wrong with him, all these things that were wrong with him, and then he begins to answer him. And now we're into number 10, where he just kind of goes on to lament, just to kind of go on and complain about what is going on in his life. And he goes like this. He says this in verse number 1. It says, "I loathe my very life, therefore I will give free rein to my complaint and speak out in the bitterness of my soul." So he just begins to say, you know what? Life stinks right now. I am now just going to let it loose. I am now just going to let out my complaints. But I really love what it says in verse number 2. "I will say to God, do not condemn me, but tell me what charges you have against me." This reveals a little bit of Job's heart throughout this chapter. If he says, you know, God, I don't feel like I've done anything wrong, but can you let me know if I've done something wrong, God? That if this all is caused because of something I have done, can you let me know if that's what it is? And really, if you look at Job's theology, which would mean his view of God, it is all based from a relationship of who God is and a reverence for God's authority in his life. Because throughout this entire chapter, he continues to go on. Like in verse 8, he gives a whole, a whole kind of remembrance of how God created him. He says, you know what, God, you shaped me in my mother's wombs. You did this. So he's kind of going through his relationship with God. God, I recognize that you're the one that created me. I recognize that your hands molded me like clay. And so he's saying all of these things, right? But then he kind of has an honest conversation with God. And a lot of times we feel like this whole religion thing, many times, like this is some people's reaction. Well, this is happening in my life, so God must not be real. How does that work? That you think God is real, then if he does something you don't understand or you don't necessarily agree with, all of a sudden he's not real and you don't want to follow him. To me, this is my belief. I believe God is real. God sits on the throne, and one day when I die, I'm going to have to go and stand in front of his throne, and he's going to judge me and let me know if I'm going to heaven or hell. And so to me, that will never change. Whether God makes a decision I agree with or don't agree with, that doesn't change the fact that one day every knee will bow to God. And Job realizes that. He goes on and says all these things. God, I'm suffering. All of this is happening, but you're still in control, God. And so his conversation to God is really from that tone. God, why are you doing this? Why is this happening? God, what is it that you're doing? But not a single time does he doubt that God is God, or does he doubt that God is in control. Instead of, this is a huge thing, instead of him trying to force God into some sort of his understanding, he is trying to mold his understanding into what God is doing. Okay, so he's saying, God, how can I understand you better? Not God, how can you work in a way that is more understandable for me? He says, okay, God, this is all happening. I don't understand. Why are you doing this? Why is this happening, God? I know there's a reason for you doing it. I know that you are doing this for a reason. And he has this bitterness in his life, but even in his darkest time, he may express his pain. He may express his hurt, but it's from a relational aspect, a relational perspective of saying, okay, God, I understand you're still in control. I understand all of this, but what's going on? Can you just let me know why this is happening? Is it because I've sinned? Can you let me know if there's something I need to do, God? He doesn't take the time to say, God, you're wrong for what you're doing. God, you shouldn't be doing this. That's another one of our reactions, right? We either say that God's not real, or we tell God he should be doing something else. That God, you didn't create the universe. You don't understand life. I understand better than you. He never has that. He just says, God, my life stinks right now. And I would like things to either change or I would like to die. That's the point where he gets to. But just from the perspective of reading how Job talks to God, there's not a single moment that Job questions God's identity, or that Job questions God's identity, or he questions God's authority and power over the universe. And I think that's something for us to hold on to and remember, that no matter what happens in our life, we should never question who God is, his power, his authority, any of those things, because though we may not understand what's going on, it's never an excuse for us to think that we are the ones controlling God. Instead, we should say, okay, there is a possibility something I could be doing is wrong. And so then he says from the very beginning in verse 2, tell me what charges you have against me. So today, I just hope that in your relationship with God, that you would just rest in the fact that God is sovereign, God is in control, though things may be going away you don't understand. Just remember, that's never an excuse for us to push away God or for us to question God's authority over all of the earth. So we love you, and we look forward to seeing you this Sunday morning. We love you. We pray that you have an amazing day.